All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started while people start wandering back in the room. Welcome back to the second plenary session of the 16th Annual Baltic Development Forum Summit, as well as the 5th Annual European Forum for the EU Strategy for the Baltic Sea Region. This second plenary session, introducing key areas of business cooperation, is actually a foreshadowing to a number of the parallel working sessions that come after lunch. So there are 4 to start with, directly after lunch, and then 3 a little bit later on in the day. So these 7 panelists that I will be soon welcoming up on the stage will be speaking to each of these different topics. And so now I'd like to, and we will be taking some quick questions after each intervention. So if you have a quick thing on your mind after the speaker has spoken, we will be taking 1 quick question. But there's 7 speakers, so we need to keep the pace going. So I'd like to welcome up on stage our 7 speakers. We have Alexander Stubb, who's the Minister for European Affairs and Foreign Trade from Finland. Andrzej Jagusiewicz, the Chief Inspector of Environment Protection in Poland. And we have Milan Obradovic from Malmö City Council. Douwe Cunningham, the Secretary General of SEAEurope in Brussels. Oliver Rittgen, the CEO of Bayer Nordic. We have Maksim, the Chairman of the Committee for Industrial Policy and Innovation at the City Government of St. Petersburg in Russia. And finally, Ville Niinistö, the Minister of Environment in Finland. Is everybody up on stage? Thank you. And I'd like to welcome Alexander Stubb. I know that you have a history of one of the godfathers of the Baltic Sea region collaboration. And I'm very happy to welcome you up on stage to give your intervention first. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if the word godfather is a good one to use. It's a little bit worrying. I must say I'm struck by the extremely good fashion taste that our panelists have. I think godfathers usually wear yellow pants, and you guys are looking absolutely fabulous in those. Who says that dandy is not good? Really nice to see all of you here today. I feel a little bit baffled because this is usually a stage which has one of the biggest TV shows that we ever see, and it's called The Voice of Finland. So all of our musical talents are singing here, but I shall spare you that embarrassment today. In my allotted 5 minutes, I shall try to give you 3 rather succinct points about the Baltic Sea. The first one is about Baltic Sea growth. The second one is going to be about the success story of the Baltic Sea. And the third one, my 10 commandments on and from the Baltic Sea strategy. Now, if we kick it off with the growth base, there are going to be a lot of people around here and during these Baltic Sea days that are going to talk about the Baltic Sea as our sea, the Mare Nostrum of the northeastern part of Europe. And I would have a tendency to agree, because if we look at the figures, we're almost 100 million people around the sea. That's approximately 20% of the population of the EU. Of course, Poland is the superpower in this particular bit, because 40% of those people who are around the Baltic Sea live in Poland. The Scandinavian or Nordic countries are 25%, 15% Germany, 13% Russia, 7% the Baltic Sea states. It's a well-populated area, and on top of that, if you look at it as a growth base, it actually looks pretty good. The Baltic states as such, of course, are our champs of growth. At the moment, Germany is very solid. Poland was one of the few countries that did not go into a recession during the worst part of the financial crisis. Finland has remained and retained its position as a AAA country, and of course Sweden and Denmark have been dynamic throughout. So when I travel the world with trade or other issues, I often point out that the Baltic Sea is actually the place to be. If you look at competitive indexes, we're all up there, so we guys are actually doing quite well. So the Baltic Sea as such, I think point number 1, is quite easy to brand and argue for as a growth base. The second point I wanted to make is the Baltic Sea as a success story. I remember when we were working on the Baltic Sea strategy, we always talked about the Baltic Sea being very frail and fragile. The average depth of the Baltic Sea, as you all know, is no more than approximately 50 meters. On top of that, the circulation of a drop of water in and out from the Baltic Sea is very slow. Just 3% goes out, 3% comes in. That means an annual circulation of approximately 30 years. Now, I, as a politician, don't often make a claim to fame, or at least I try to avoid it. But there's one thing that I am at least moderately proud of in my political career, and that is when I became an MEP in 2004, I started to push for something that later was branded as the Baltic Sea Strategy. Did I do it alone? Absolutely not. We initiated it together from a Baltic Sea action group with, of course, MEPs from the Baltic Sea region, and the final report had the names of Thomas Hendrik Ilves, the current president of Estonia, and yours truly. We felt that this was one of the kickoffs for greater awareness of the Baltic Sea region. And indeed, I would argue that perhaps part of the Baltic Sea Days that we are having here have their epistemology in that report. The final and third point I wanted to make is to have a look at the so-called 10 commandments of the Baltic Sea Strategy that we pushed forward in 2006, 2007, and just a quick checklist on whether they materialized or not. How many minutes have I spoken?
4.
Yeah.
4. Here it is, in 1 minute, the 10 commandments of the Baltic Sea. 1, the Commission should make an initiative on the Baltic Sea strategy. They did, and this is actually the first time that the European Parliament has actually gotten the Commission to do an initiative for them. Number 2, once a year we should have a summit meeting of prime ministers and presidents around the Baltic Sea. Well, at the moment it's a little bit challenging, but don't worry, we'll end up having them, and we are already doing that. Number 3, there should be an own budget line for the Baltic Sea strategy. That indeed exists. Number 4, all programs should take horizontally environmental protection into consideration. I think we're doing that at least partially. Number 5, we should have protective areas in the Baltic Sea. I think we could improve of that. Number 6, we should improve the energy cooperation between Baltic Sea countries, and I think we're doing that. The Baltic Connector is one example. The possible joint LNG terminal between Estonia and Finland is another one. Number 7, we should have a sea highway on the Baltic Sea. We are doing that. Number 8, we should focus on research centers and student exchange. We are working on that. Number 9, we should work on traffic networks and improving them all around the region. I think we're doing that, and we did it in the financial framework 214-220. And number 10, we should have more cooperation on border crossings in the region. Of course, visa liberalization being one of them. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, what I wanted to say in my 10 minutes. Number 1, I think this is a great growth area. Number 2, I think it's a good success story which we should be proud of and promote around the world. And number 3, many of the 10 commandments that we put down in the Baltic Sea strategy have materialized. Thank you very much.
Alex, thank you very much. Thank you very much. As Emily mentioned, we will be fishing for questions after each of the speakers so as to allow for a discussion among all of us. So please catch our eyes if you want to ask Alex a question. This is the time. But as you are thinking, I want to come back on something which we discussed in the previous panel. Because the message of the previous panel was that there is a new normal in the region. And even though we are top of the competitiveness rankings, we are still experiencing fairly low growth. And that paradigm is with us to stay. One of the panelists announced the end of the skilled worker, suggesting that we should depart from orthodox thinking about sources of growth and look for the new ones. How do we combine preserving what we have achieved in the region and looking for new sources of growth?
A small question.
small question for about 2 minutes.
Thanks. I'll give you a small answer, and that is that I think, yes, this is a region of growth, but at the same time, we, as actors in the public sector or the political field, should not bloat or overemphasize the possibility of the public sector generating that growth. That growth happens basically through 3 means. One is structural change at home. That means live and let live, especially our companies and enterprises. Number 2, by liberalizing the internal market, the freer, the better. And number 3, through liberalizing world trade, because I think our competitive edge will help out on this. But let's not try to find out government sources of growth, because it's not governments that create jobs nor growth, it's private enterprises that do it.
Thanks so much. Again, one more look around the room. There will be more time for questions when we are finished. Alex, thank you very much. And I would like to go on now to discuss...
Thanks, and could we have probably microphones on the tables? I think that would be helpful if you can get them from there.
Yes, so exactly. Because
otherwise
maybe
this becomes a sports event of running back and forth.
If you want to come back on any of the issues that we discussed, you are more than welcome. But let's discuss how to save our sea, because surely the one thing that unites us is that little ponds in between. And I would like to invite Andrzej Jagusiewicz, who is the Chief Inspector of the Environment in Poland, to tell us how we can build the mutual trust on these issues.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for inviting me to speak. But first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for putting me on the agenda and allowing me to speak about how to save our beloved sea. I have no any miraculous recipe, particularly that I feel very much stressed being as a sandwich between the 2 eminent Finnish ministers, Alexander and Ville, but I will try to do my best. So first of all, I would like to say to you, Excellencies, to you, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the Baltic Sea, that next steps to save the Baltic depend very much on investments. I think that investments should be friendly, smart, and tailor-made. Tailor-made, what Alexander just said, taking into account the, let's say, size of the Baltic Sea and its characteristics. So also taking into account the sensitivity of the Baltic ecosystems. So I would like to say in 3 points: no excessive investments, perhaps no Baltic highways, but just expressways, and no unfriendly fishing by trawling. So if we go for larger investment, then don't forget that we have ESPO Convention, which speaks about strategic environmental assessment. So let's use it, but let's use it jointly, because not all parties to the Helsinki Convention are the parties to the ESPO Convention. Then, if we go to funding, we had a good morning session on funding. I would like to say that what Getty said, big is not always best when it comes to investments. So if we go for small and medium investments, when we go for small and medium funding, don't forget that the crisis in 2009 was done by the big players. So let's go for small and medium funding, and let's go from small and medium enterprises. Then beneficiaries are quite simple to identify. Let's start with agriculture, diffused polluter of the Baltic Sea. Let's go through aquaculture, mussels and fish. Let's go to biogas plants using algae, and you should be quick because they still do exist. If we purify our Baltic, this option would be over. Then also go for friendly tourism infrastructure, which is still lagging behind the word sustainable or friendly infrastructure for tourism. And finally, the smallest investors were all sitting here in this room and living across the Baltic region. For example, let's start with using detergents without phosphorus for laundry machines, for dishwasher machines. This is the option available for us without almost no cost, but good behavior, good choice of us as consumers. Don't litter the Baltic. Take into account that littering the Baltic is another threat which is on stake right now. So this is a double challenge for us as professionals and for us as citizens. I write back now from fifth item. Item stands for International Dialogue on Underwater Munitions held in Halifax. During this item, we have established so-called ITAB, International Technology Advisory Board, which can help how to do in the best safe manner recovery and destruction of dumped chemical munitions. Commissioner Johannes Hahn just spoke about it in the morning. So thank you very much, Hahn, for this, let's say, point. These dumped chemical munitions are ticking by leaking ecological bombs. And we are ready to go for a pilot project to start recovering these ticking bombs from the Baltic deep. We need safe exploration and exploitation of the Baltic seabed. And we should do this where our interest is vital. And finally, let me go for a few conclusions. We should play full synergy between EU Baltic Sea Regional Strategy, Marine Strategy Framework Directive, and HELCOM. No duplication, full synergy, and harmonization. One standard, one monitoring. Then, if we go to 3PP principles, polluter pays principles, I would like to replace by prevention pollution pays. Pays making profit with public-private partnership and for private business alone too. And finally, cooperation should be across the whole region, Baltic Basin, I mean, including some neighboring countries, Poland, for example, and should be following three key words: openness, transparency, and mutual trust. I repeat, mutual trust. Because, finally, we should implement daily the roadmap which was set by the HELCOM Ministerial on the 3rd of October, and which is included in the requirements of the EU, not strategy, but directive on marine strategy. And finally, I can only finish by saying that Poland will deliver its target sooner or later, but always on time, as we delivered on 14th of May, full X-ray picture of our dump phosphogypsum stuck in Wislinka. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Fishing for questions. No questions. I have a little question for you, as you had the opportunity being the first of several speakers on the panel talking about the marine environment and environmental sustainability that they work with. I was wondering if you have some topics that you would like to hear from other speakers in the panel.
For example, I would like to listen more about how my colleagues from this panel are tackling problems resulting from agriculture.
Okay. This is a very good question to even bring up in the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And next on the list, we have Milan Obradovic, coming from my region of the world in southern Sweden, from the Malmö City Council.
Before I start, I'll say this. In Sweden, we have a super election year this year. We have the election for the European Parliament, which has been done. and we have the election for the municipality level, the region and national level. And a lot of people talking about politics and a lot of people talking about the environment and sustainability. But the bad thing is that most of them don't know what to talk about, because politics is to want, politics is to venture, having the will and the courage to work for changes. In Malmö, we have the will and the courage. That's why we're one of the most sustainable cities in the world. And now I'm going to do a presentation. Malmö, the young global unified city. The average age in Malmö now is below 35. And it's, we've gone from a grey, dull industry city to innovative city. Let's see here. Oh, there it is. Malmö was a shipyard city, industry. We built the largest oil tankers in the world in the city of Malmö. And during the 90s, there was oil crisis and Kockums disappeared, basically. This is what happened. We lost about 26,000 jobs in Malmö, many of them from Kockums. And you can see there's a crane standing there. And even the crane was demounted and sent to Korea. And then we had to have a new picture of Malmö, how we should build Malmö. And our mayor at that time, Ilmar Reepalu, had a vision of a sustainable, innovative city. So it was about high goals and long-term goals. So here you can see we started to build on the left side a new area called the Western Harbour. It should be one of the most sustainable areas in the world. It's total CO-neutral, no emissions. And then we have the connection with the bridge to Denmark. It was very important for us. Then by building this bridge, we created an area, region for 3.8 million inhabitants. So it was a really good experience for Malmö. About 26% of GNP in Denmark and Sweden are done in the Öresunds region. And we had a university in Malmö, which contributed to a lot of young people moving into Malmö. And we created a city tunnel in Malmö as well, so we could go even faster to Copenhagen and travel inside the city, not use so much the car. And this is Malmö now. 2012, we have a new silhouette. It's turning torso instead of Kockums crane. And we use the marina, so people coming to the area, swim, go bathing. And it's in fact now that more people working now in Kockums area than used to before. And there's about 8,000 people in the university there, and a lot of people living there as well. And it's about high technology. Green roofs is one thing, it's sustainable building. You know, by putting on green roofs, you reduce the heating demand during the winter and the cooling demand during the summer. And it's good for biodiversity as well. Open day water. And then we change focus from the car to pedestrians and bicycle and public transport. So about 23% of the inhabitants in Malmö taking a bike to the work every day. So invest in the new areas there as well, like a bike and ride. You can take the bicycle down to the city, park your bike, go into the train station, take the train to the next city. And by 2020, Malmö has a goal to be carbon neutral as a municipality. So that's why I'm investing in windmill as well. And by 2030, we have the whole city will be carbon neutral. So that's why I had to invest in new technology to lower the emissions and lower the electricity demand. And Western Harbour has been grown now, so this is the largest area in the world with this kind of buildings. Different kind of certifications, BREEAM, and so on. And this is the special building. Everything in this building is steered by IT. So by having IT steering the heat, ventilation, alarm system, and the cooling, you can reduce the heating demand by 50% and the electricity demand by 20%. So that's why she used new technology. Hyllie is a new area in Malmö as well. Everything is done in high technology with IT. Varsdalen University area, more universities coming, new schools coming into the area. And public transport is very important for the city. Now we're planning to use the former railway tracks, which is used only for freight, to use them as public transport as well. So we create a ring inside the city. And we're going from green, environmental and economical sustainability to social sustainability as well. We forgot that part when we created the city. We forget about other parts. Now we're doing everything we can do to connect them. And one thing is a special bus. It's the Malmö Express. It's a super bus. It's 24 meter long. It looks like a tram, but it's electricity, gas, hydrogen with Wi-Fi and latest technology. At the same time, we're connecting the city so people will go from side to side. Because a lot of people living in the outskirts of Malmö hasn't been to the sea, even though they live there for 20 years. So this is a way to make them use the city. And this is another part, Augustenborg, a greenhouse, how we can look and work with solar energy, highest technology, green roof, balconies we can grow growth and stuff. And Rosengård, this is also an area we're planning for tram, a new station we connect the city as well. And this is a vision, a culture Casper, how we can make a building in the outskirts area to make it more popular so people come to those areas as well. So we have gone from industry city, grey dull city to a new innovative city. Thank you. That was a speed.
Milan, thank you very much. We all now want to move to Malmö to see all these new projects happening. Let us ask you a couple of questions on what you have said. Last year, I had the privilege to serve as rapporteur of review of European innovation partnerships, and one of these partnerships is on smart cities. Yeah. And the basic conclusion from many people that we interviewed was that now city officials are the last people you should turn to if you want to get innovation in a city, with all due respect. Mm-hmm. What you should do is you should ask the stakeholders, the citizens, because this is where you should get started. Their aspirations are what should drive you as city officials in innovating, in finding future solutions. I imagine you have done an awful lot of that in your projects, because you wouldn't be where you are. But if you could tell us a little bit more about how you get people on board. This summit is about inclusiveness. So how do you consult? And Emily, who has the advantage of coming from the region, surely has a much more penetrating question for you in stock.
Yeah, it was more of, in all of the work that you're doing to become a smart city, do you take inspiration from other cities or regions within the Baltic Sea region, for instance? Do you work together with them on solving common challenges, as was mentioned by the previous speaker?
Yeah. Well, it's really not that difficult as many think. It's about setting up high goals and long-term goals. If you do that, if you have the political will, then you can accomplish something. We put up high goals in the Western Harbour, and the different companies started to build housing and infrastructure, and then they started competing with each other. Who can be the best building? Who can has the best certification out there? So everyone is competing with each other in this area. But we, of course, we're talking with a different kind of investor, has partnership with Siemens and so on, Aon, and we're working together to make it Malmö the most sustainable city, which is our goal. And of course, we're working with different partners as well. We have a tight work with Copenhagen, and especially Helsingborg in the Swedish area, but in the Öresund region, we're working close together and setting up goals for the region. But the problem is that the politicians on the national level are not so interested. They're thinking about lower the taxes and stay in parliament. They don't care about so much about the future. They're looking at 4 years at a time. But as a politician, local level, you're the driving force for the development. You're the one making the world sustainable. So you have to set high goals and long-term goals and work close with the other ones. Yeah. Networks.
Right. Milan, thank you very much. I'm sure we will come back to some of these issues in the discussion. And now we are moving into the yellow trousers territory. And I would like to invite Mr. Cunningham, who is Secretary General of SEAEurope, to tell us what is the potential in the maritime industry and blue growth.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here today. I would also like to thank Mr. Obradovic for his illuminating insight into the developments of Malmö. However, I have to say, the start of his presentation was rather sad from my point of view, given the fact that I'm showing the future perspectives of the European maritime industry, and in particularly shipbuilding and maritime technologies. So hopefully I can put a positive spin back on the shipbuilding and maritime industries sector. Just very briefly, SEAEurope is the organization representing European shipbuilders and marine equipment manufacturers in 18 different countries within the European Union. And I think it is very apt today that we are talking in Turku, given the fact that one of our largest members is situated not so far away from here. So I think it's an honor to be present. When I talk about the maritime technology industry, I'm really talking about the two pillars you see here on the left and the central part of this slide. So I'm really mentioning here all maritime systems, equipment, material, and services which goes into the building of a vessel, and then the project responsibility and the system integrators when actually manufacturing the vessel for the final product. We represent around about 95% of the overall shipbuilding value chain. So the future perspectives of the maritime technology industry. I think the main word for this presentation is evolution. The sector is a sector which has been evolving since the beginning of time. I would say maritime has been part of the European history for as long as we can remember. And here is just a snapshot of the last couple of centuries, where we see vessels moving from sail through to steam, then to diesel, and who knows what the vessel of the future might look like. But I think that the main principle of the maritime technology industry, despite vessels often being out of sight and out of mind, is a sector which is evolving gradually, and Europe has always been at the forefront of this evolution and will remain to do so. If we look at the structure of the industry and why I mentioned the Turku shipyard briefly before, we can see the structure divided into three layers, with the shipyard at the top acting as integrators of very high complex systems and technologies, which is then broadened or goes down this pyramid into the sub-suppliers or the system integrators and the sub-suppliers, which are the component manufacturers in the second level. So the shipyard really brings together a number of suppliers, not just in the local region, but in the broader region. And this is a point which I'll come back onto in a moment for the benefit of employment. If we look at the value, often maritime technologies and shipbuilding are seen as a declining industry, often competing very heavily against foreign countries such as Korea, China, and Japan. However, a study that we as an association undertook last year at the value of the vessels which are currently built within Europe, we see that we are ranked number 3 in the global overall, let's say, order book. This is higher than Japan. The reason for this is the type of vessels that Europe has evolved into or specialized in building, mainly consisting of passenger vessels, offshore, Arctic, and so on. So really high technology, high value, futuristic, in inverted commas, vessels which serve the needs of the European society. I think I'll skip this slide for the sake of time. If we look then at the multiplier effect of employment, and unfortunately I don't have a Finnish example, but I will take a German example in this case. I look at two shipyards owned by the same company in Germany, the overall Meyerwerft group. And if we look at the left-hand column, we see that the Meyerwerft shipyard, as a shipyard, employs in the local region 4,740 people. If we then take the other regions into account where technologies and systems being put on the cruise ships which Meyerwerft builds are taken into account, then we see that the employment is multiplied to 16,530 approximately people. And the total value for Germany in this case is 21,000 employed people for the one Meyerwerft shipyard, indirectly and directly, of course. If we then take a look at the right-hand column and the second yard in Germany, the Neptune Werft, which specializes in building inland navigation or inland waterway vessels, we see the local regional employment of around 1,500. The other German regions sitting at around 3,000, building the systems and so on, with the total German, let's say, employment for just these two shipyards, directly and indirectly again, at 4,500 people. So you can see that Meyerwerft, Neptunwerft in Germany can then multiply if we take into the systems and the technologies into account which are built outside of Germany, because of course we are Europe and we promote European, let's say, integration of products. You see a 30,000 employment multiplier effect. And if you then take into account which the Turku shipyard here at the moment also specializes in the building of the cruise vessels, we see a total value of 330,000 people. So you can clearly see that from a shipyard perspective, including the manufacturers of the technologies, there's a huge employment multiplier effect for this sector. If we then take a little look closer down at the, or closer to the systems of which go into the vessels, you see that Europe has the highest value market share of equipment which is being built, around 100 and, well, let's say I think it's 43% of the 125 billion market share. And I think that Europe is more or less 7.6 billion of that.
I'm going to ask you to...
Sorry.
If we could get to the conclusions.
Yeah, sure. I think that for the overall sector, given into account the market difficulties which we have seen and heard in the previous presentations of the global economic and financial crisis, etc., I think that the maritime technology industry can be seen as a growth market for a number of reasons. The energy demand, offshore oil and gas and the renewable energy sector, the growth of the cruise industry, and in this case, the aging population is seen as a benefit for the sector. We also see that there's huge blue growth potential and the resources from the sea, which can be, let's say, utilized for the benefits of Europe, and therefore we should promote European technologies to take advantage of this. The use of the Arctic Ocean and the Finnish example of the, let's say, the icebreakers being built here, 60% I think was quoted this morning, I think is a huge specialization which can be taken advantage of. The political or geopolitical situations and therefore investment again in naval shipbuilding will see growth in the coming years. And I would say the addressing of climate change and the need for, let's say, new products and systems to ensure that ships can remain environmentally friendly and provide clean future. Very briefly on how to encourage these evolutions, and this is my last slide, I think the promotion of skills and training is something which is very important. This morning we heard that the skilled workforce is dead, but I think that we do really need a skilled workforce to encourage the manufacturing of the vessels and technologies for the future. Global level playing field, ensuring that trade policy is let's say, fair across the world. The regional clustering of technologies. We hear that Finland has clustered together the Arctic innovations and so on. Norway is looking more at the offshore, so I think that this regional clustering can bring together companies and foster cooperation, ensuring a fair access to finance, and of course looking forward to the research, development and innovation to encourage evolution. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any quick questions for Mr. Cunningham? If not, I have a quick one. The theme of the panel was key areas for business cooperation. You mentioned a bunch of areas for the sector, for the marine equipment sector, areas of growth. Are there some of those areas of growth that are also areas of business cooperation among different partners in the macro region?
The strength of our sector is the fact that we are able to cooperate across regions, looking at the different marine technologies and taking it into the European context. We have a very close network of companies doing research, development and innovation across the continent, and also to a certain extent across the shipyards to ensure that we can further the innovative products to be put on board ships which are being built here. So there's a very close regional cooperation in this instance.
Thank you very much. Next we get to hear from the health sector, Mr. Oliver Rittgen coming from Bayer, Nordic. Welcome to the podium.
Dear ministers, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for having me here today to talk about how we can contribute to growing businesses together. especially, as you said, in the life science sector, where Bayer is a strong investor here in the Nordic countries. I also want to congratulate the organizers here for getting a wide range of stakeholders together for a very important event, because I think we really need to work together to create economic growth in a sustainable way. And I believe this event is actually a great opportunity to develop that collaboration. I would like to share today some of my thoughts around what I see as growth drivers in life sciences, in particular healthcare. But before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about Bayer and what we concretely do to counter the effects of climate change. Bayer's revenues worldwide last year were 40 billion euros roughly, with approximately 115,000 employees worldwide, over 13,000 of those working in research and development. We have actually 3 business divisions, 2 of which are life sciences, healthcare and crop science, and a third one which is material science. And we believe we are in a good position with these businesses to contribute to societies around us and to the challenges and macro trends modern societies are facing today. Bayer has about 5 billion euros in assets here in the Nordic countries. That represents roughly 10% of Bayer's global assets. And that reflects probably how seriously we are looking at the Nordic growth and how committed as a company we are to this Baltic region. I'm the head of the Nordic countries, which is comprising of 8 countries with about 1,400 employees, 10% of them working in R&D. Most of them actually very closely located here in the neighborhood in Turku. Most of our sites are actually also close to the Baltic Sea, so we see the sea every day out of our windows, so we can say it's probably top of our minds when we talk about Baltic Sea and sustainability. Sustainable business is more than a buzzword for us. Having a 150 years company history, we have always taken a long-term perspective to sustainability. We recognize the scientific evidence indicating that man-made climate change is a fact. We also recognize that the industry's responsibility as a greenhouse gas emitter. Bayer therefore strives to reduce its own emissions according to stringent reduction targets. More importantly, we believe that innovative products made by Bayer, especially those ones for thermal insulation, for instance, can make a significant contribution to countering the effects of climate change. Our Nordic factories are focused on healthcare and probably have as such very low emissions. Still, we work hard to protect the environment, prevent pollution, and to improve our environmental performance. The manufacturing facility here in the neighborhood adheres to IC environmental and management standards, and I'm always proud to say that actually the air which is used in the factory and comes out of the factory is actually cleaner than the air which went into the factory, due to the clean room conditions we need to have for the manufacturing. Talking about air, and I think we have seen part of that industry already on some of the charts today, we also operate our Global Wind Energy Center here in Denmark, which primary objective is to help make wind energy at least as cost efficient as fossil fuels, and to this end increase the availability of renewable energy. Our role here is to develop advanced polyurethane composites for wind blades and other applications. As important for me personally and for Bayer protecting the environment is, we need to be able to afford it. And for that, growth is necessary. Let me now turn to the field of life sciences and the opportunities to grow together. Here in the Nordic countries, I specifically see the innovation and knowledge-based life sciences as a high potential area for growth. And this is, from my perspective, supported by 4 factors. First, we have good education systems and skilled employees. This is originally the reason for our plant here in Turku and the R&D activities we have here, as well as for our second R&D site in the Nordic countries in Norway, where we do research and development for alpha pharmaceuticals for the treatment of cancer. The most recent development were just published yesterday with our newest collaboration agreement with Orion Pharma here in Finland for the development of an innovative cancer drug. This all, I believe, is great evidence of the innovation capabilities and the skilled workforces we have here in the Nordic countries. Second main factor is the availability of interesting healthcare innovation ecosystems. For example, the Medical Valley in Denmark and Sweden, and I think Malmö plays an important role here. The innovation hub around Karolinska in Stockholm, the cancer cluster in Oslo and Helsinki, just to name some. They could be developed further, for instance, into more Nordic collaboration platforms. Thirdly, Nordic societies around the Baltic Sea are relatively small, where we can turn a limitation, which we have usually on the sales side, into a competitive advantage, which would make it easier to forge connections that spur further innovation, competitiveness, and growth. We need to ask ourselves whether this competitive advantage is really fully utilized yet. Last but not least, in healthcare, there's the phenomenon called the silver economy, which is often connected with challenges in public healthcare, pension funding, and labor shortages. But you can also see it as a business area with enormous growth potentials. The economic potential related to the silver economy in Europe is based on the fact that the retirees of the baby boomer generation will be wealthier than their predecessors were ever before, and they are used to consume. In the Nordic countries, we have rapidly aging populations, so we ought to be at the forefront of developing new products and services, which at a later point in time can be exported to other countries being then in need for these solutions. Taking these four factors into consideration, I encourage to work together and to learn from each other, and to create growth for this in the Baltic Sea Days is a perfect opportunity. My thoughts to generate growth and investments have been around an innovation platform, which would connect academia, government, large and small and medium-sized companies to create growth together and in the most optimal way. I grant that there are already some platforms available, but maybe they don't work always to the needs of foreign direct investors. For instance, here in Finland, foreign affiliates represent 15% of total private sector employment and 20% of total GDP. The OECD classifies Finland as a high potential, low performance country for FDI attraction. Academics are often close to the source of innovation, but mechanisms for commercializing or patenting the innovation may not exist. Attitudes may not help either, as benefiting from academic research commercially may be considered with collegial envy. Here I think, again, Karolinska Innovation in Sweden, specialized in turning life science research into successful businesses, is a good example going forward. Another growth point for academia is to make sure the curriculum meets actually the needs of the industry. For us, that means working together with the universities to develop industrial pharmacists and experts in advanced mechatronics, for example. The government is seeking new ways to fuel economic growth through available tools, such as innovation policies, R&D incentives, or publicly funded research. We know that the Dutch are doing quite well with the innovation box, and we also have seen small countries in Asia like Singapore developing into innovation hubs for a complete region. The question for the Baltic Sea economies is to find the best solution that draws on their relative strengths, and here Nordic economies can benefit from the existing ecosystems where talents can cross borders, as we know. We agree with the work done by the Finnish government with its health growth strategy published just last week. This is directionally correct, and we expect appropriate measures to follow now. For smaller companies, the challenge is often to bridge the financial gap between seed financing and global commercialization. Here is where global players like Bayer can be a smart alternative to venture capitals. In the end, growth is dependent on how well the different stakeholders work together in an innovation system which really works and where companies can engage. Nordic countries around the Baltic Sea could probably get a bigger share of foreign direct investment if we would find even better ways to engage. I think this meeting is a great example by our hosts here in Turku. I see our role as Bayer as a catalyst of innovation, especially in the life sciences where we have a strong presence. We are eager to contribute to this development and welcome any dialogue on that topic. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Oliver, thank you very much. I have a quick follow-up question because we need to rush to finish on time. And this is about how to get the effect of scale in what you mentioned, these innovation hubs, because you kept on referring to the Karolinska University and the hub around it, which is a great example. But if you look at the ranking of universities, the Baltic Sea doesn't really feature in the first 200 or 300. We are somewhere in the third 100, the fourth 100, but we're not top of the world when it comes to university rankings. So how do we, in fact, clone the example you mentioned? How do we ensure that it's not just single areas where these innovation hubs are built, but that the phenomenon is more widespread?
I think it's not necessarily about cloning. It's about finding solutions for countries and ecosystem which fits the needs of the countries. I think Karolinska is a good example because they were able to leverage on the patents existing in the universities and bringing them into business and small startups. I mean, we have a number of Finnish colleagues here today. When I look at the Finnish situation, we have probably a lot of IP sitting in the universities, but not necessarily the infrastructure to really bring it into startups and with that to create growth in the industry. And here, I mean, with the investments we have done, I think we have shown that we strongly believe in the innovation capabilities we have. And even if we don't have, let's say, these highest ranking universities here in the Nordics, I still believe when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship, we have a lot of strengths and assets in the countries, and now it's just a question to bring the different players together so that young startups can see where they get their funds from in order to grow their business into global business, how we get patents and IP and knowledge into business, into innovation. And for that, my strong belief is we need certain platforms to do that, and then probably also on the incentive side, some incentives to actually do research and development in these countries and to bring foreign direct investment here.
I understand. So more homegrown initiatives without one-size-fits-all solutions. Oliver, thank you very much. We will now move across the sea to speak about how we cooperate with Russia. And we already saw in the State of the Region reports that business sentiment has been affected by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. How can we shield what goes on between us, especially the cooperation with St. Petersburg region, from these our more general influences? Meyksin is chairman of the Committee for Industrial Policy and Innovation in the city government of St. Petersburg. We will now need headphones if any of us don't speak Russian, because Maksim is going to speak in Russian.
Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые друзья, я рад приветствовать вас на саммите государств Балтийского моря. Основная тема моего доклада – это экономическая кооперация в регионе Балтийского моря. И у нас достаточно успешно складываются партнерские отношения с городом Турку, город, который принимает сегодня этот авторитетный форум. И как раз на примере взаимодействия Санкт-Петербурга и Турку я хотел бы рассказать о возможностях для сотрудничества между нашими регионами. Санкт-Петербург сегодня окончательно сформировался как один из экономических центров в Российской Федерации, и ключевыми сферами развития экономики являются промышленность и торговля. Иностранные инвестиции, комфортный экономический климат, инвестиционный климат, который создан в Санкт-Петербурге, сейчас обеспечивает ежегодный достаточно существенный рост инвестиций. И в 2013 году объем инвестиций превысил более чем $13 миллиардов. На сегодняшний день среди перспектив нашего взаимодействия в Балтийском регионе мы считаем достаточно значимым это фармацевтику, судостроение и инновации. На слайде кратко представлены основные черты характерные для отраслей Санкт-Петербурга. Далее я хотел бы их немножко более подробно рассмотреть как основные направления для нашего сотрудничества. Я хочу начать с одного из самых динамично развивающихся и перспективных кластеров в Санкт-Петербурге. Это фармацевтической и медицинской промышленности. В структуру кластера на территории Санкт-Петербурга входит порядка 150 компаний. Среди них более 100 – это производственные компании, 22 компании являются производителями лекарственных средств, и 87 производят медицинскую технику и изделия медицинского назначения. И также в кластер входит более 30 научных центров, научно-исследовательских институтов, которые занимаются существенной работой по разработкам, в том числе по подготовке образованных кадров для отрасли. И также оказывают специализированные услуги для компаний кластера. В Петербурге сейчас расположены ведущие вузы, которые обеспечивают предприятия высококвалифицированным персоналом. В Турку отрасль био и life science также заметно развита. Есть уникальный опыт в сфере лекарственных разработок и последующей их коммерциализации. Есть пример успешного сотрудничества, и я считаю, что мы можем развивать наше как раз сотрудничество в этой сфере, в сфере образовательных программ, разработки, коммерциализации на европейском и на российском рынке. Выход к Балтийскому морю открывает как для Турку, так и для Санкт-Петербурга и для всех стран Балтийского региона удобное и выгодное направление для взаимодействия – это судостроение. У Турку есть опыт строительства танкеров и ледоколов, так же, как и у Санкт-Петербурга. В нашем городе сконцентрировано более 80% научно-технического потенциала всей Российской Федерации. У нас действует целый комплекс научно-исследовательских и проектно-конструкторских организаций, которые на самом деле обладают достаточно уникальными технологиями, включая и технологии разработок и испытаний судов ледового класса в ледовых бассейнах. Кроме того, с приходом инноваций в сферу судостроения начинается активный процесс и модернизации существующих верфей, и решаются вопросы по строительству новых верфей. В Турку располагается одна из современных верфей, самых современных верфей в Европе, и налажен процесс взаимодействия с небольшими компаниями по субподряду. Кроме того, в Финляндии активно развивается зеленое судостроение, и есть опыт строительства гражданских судов. Я бы хотел вспомнить, наверное, известное высказывание Стива Джобса, что инновации отличают лидера от догоняющего. И с нашей точки зрения одна из самых перспективных направлений развития является и сотрудничество, является инновация. Мы понимаем, что практически все страны Балтийского региона и Российская Федерация и Финляндия имеют очень схожие структуры по численности населения, по достаточно высокому уровню заработной платы. И мы понимаем, что тиражирование многомиллионной тиражной продукции, как это делают в странах Юго-Восточной Азии, не является возможным путем для развития наших экономик. И поэтому мы объективно понимаем, что именно развитие инноваций, развитие инновационной сферы является самым перспективным направлением для производства, разработки и производства товаров с высокой добавленной стоимостью. И в Санкт-Петербурге сейчас очень большое внимание уделяется как раз именно развитию инновационной деятельности. В Санкт-Петербурге создана уникальная инновационная среда, извините, работают государственные и частные фонды, инвестирующие в инновационные компании на разных стадиях развития. Открыто несколько бизнес-инкубаторов, создаются малые инновационные предприятия при высших учебных заведениях. Санкт-Петербург и Финляндия уже достаточно давно и успешно сотрудничают в инновационной сфере. И в Петербурге рядом с международным аэропортом Пулково расположен финский инновационный комплекс «Технополис», где ежегодно проходят различные программы приграничного сотрудничества, такие как «Эврика», рамочные программы для исследований инноваций «Горизонты 2020», европейская кооперация в науке и технологиях и другие. Финские компании ежегодно активно участвуют в Петербургском международном инновационном форуме. И, как вы знаете, каждый 10-й житель нашего города – это студент. В Петербурге расположены достаточно мощные технические высшие учебные заведения. Например, в прошлом году студенты университета информационных технологий, механики и оптики стали в очередной раз чемпионами мира по программированию. Правительством Санкт-Петербурга проводится политика, направленная на создание благоприятных условий для развития направлений высокотехнологичной промышленности. Совместно с Министерством экономического развития Российской Федерации реализуется проект создания особой экономической зоны технико-внедренческого типа. Особая экономическая зона – это достаточно уникальная среда для активного развития инновационного бизнеса, процесса научно-технической разработок, производства продукции и вывода ее на российский и международный рынок. Совокупность государственных преференций, квалифицированный, достаточно уникальный кадровый потенциал города делает привлекательным для продукции высокотехнологичных отраслей на территории особой экономической зоны. И на данный момент резидентами уже вложено более 4,5 миллиардов рублей инвестиций в развитие этой зоны. В Санкт-Петербурге активно развивается инновационная инфраструктура, и одной из ключевых является проект создания IT-парка. Проект получает частичное финансирование из средств бюджета города и от частных инвесторов. После завершения строительства более 200 резидентов IT-парка будет работать и разрабатывать телекоммуникационные технологии, IT-технологии на территории IT-парка в Санкт-Петербурге. Условия технопарка позволяют резидентам сконцентрироваться на профильной деятельности и развивать свои компании. В соответствии с проектом он будет представлять собой законченную территорию, включающую помимо деловой части учебные центры, бизнес-инкубаторы, гостиницы и различные помещения, удобные для деятельности компаний. На базовым приоритетом налоговой политики в Санкт-Петербурге является сохранение устойчивой основы экономического развития и расширение доходной базы Санкт-Петербурга. В целях привлечения инвестиций для развития города петербургским законодательством установлены инвестиционные льготы. Они представляются организациям, которые осуществляют на территории Санкт-Петербурга виды экономической деятельности в соответствии с законом Санкт-Петербурга, и которые вложили в производственные объекты сумму более 800 миллионов рублей. В Санкт-Петербурге разработано и находится порядка 60 крупных промышленных зон. 13% территории города – это земли промышленного назначения. На слайде видно, насколько удобное положение Санкт-Петербурга с точки зрения нахождения, логистики. Мы совсем рядышком и с Финляндией, и с Эстонией. Достаточно удобное автомобильное сообщение, и это дает возможность размещаться и производить на территории Санкт-Петербурга достаточно большое количество разнообразных производств. И город обеспечивает инженерную подготовку территорий, коммуникации и создает условия для развития инвесторов. Также в Санкт-Петербурге создано городское агентство по промышленным инвестициям, которое по принципу одного окна работает с инвесторами по привлечению и поддержке и сопровождению проектов, связанных с промышленной деятельностью. Это только небольшой перечень финских компаний, которые уже работают, совместно работают в Санкт-Петербурге. Среди них есть много известных компаний. Уверен, что со временем этих компаний будет все больше и больше. Спасибо за внимание и надеюсь, что наше сотрудничество будет укреплять экономики наших регионов.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Unfortunately, we're squeezed for time. We're going to have a mass exodus of about half of the panel at 1 o'clock, so we don't have time for a question, unfortunately. Thank you very much for your information about St. Petersburg's activities. Thank you. Our final speaker today is the Minister of Environment in Finland, Mr. Ville Niinistö, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Welcome to the podium.
Dear friends of the Baltic Sea region, first of all, I have to say the most important, that is welcome to my home city of Turku. And I hope you have some time to visit the archipelago and the beautiful nature and all the city's fine activities as well outside the conference. But if you look at the challenges we had ahead of us, my speech is about combining economic interests with environmental interests. And I would like to start by a bit of a global approach and then come closer to the Baltic Sea region and ponder a bit about what that means, that global change to us, and how we can make it better for the environment and for the economy in this region. If we look globally, ecological challenges are very much behind a lot of the economic crisis we're having in Europe and in the global economy. Resources are getting more expensive, harder to use and extract, and the economy that has been based on fossil fuels is coming into an end within the next 10-20 years. Climate change is out of control, ecosystems are getting diminishing, and at the same time we have problems of giving people enough access to pure, clean water in the coming decades if we don't change the core of the economy, how we are working. So we're actually seeing in some of the major economies which have been growing until the last few years, like Brazil and China, a major shift from an old-fashioned kind of economic growth to a new paradigm where also these countries, which are outside Europe looking for prosperity and economic growth, that they are looking more and more in combining productivity, environmental sustainability with economic growth. I will tell you just one figure about China, which is quite interesting. 7% of the annual Chinese GDP goes today to environmental problems. China can't grow in the long term if they don't fix their environment. And they are spending something like $1 trillion in the next 5 years in cleaning up their waters, in cleaning the polluted air, and diminishing the CO2 emissions. So if we are looking at a globe where everybody is trying to make more out of less, trying to make sure that we actually get the best, cleanest technology possible into use in our countries in order to be one of those who can maintain economic growth in a new era of environmental sustainability, it's quite clear that this region is one of the areas where we have good chances of being on the forefront of this development and also good history of cooperation to build up upon. If you think about Baltic Sea protection as one of the examples of how we can combine greening the economy with environmental sustainability and environmental protection, we have been working for something like 40 years now with protection of the sea. It's one of the most polluted seas in the world. It has to do with a lot of people living around it, a lot of industrial activities in the last 100 years. A lot of our growth has been that we, people, our societies, our industries, our economic activities have been using seas globally, not just in the Baltic region, but we have using seas as a way to hide our problems, hide the problems of how we are growing. And that road has come to an end in the last 30 years. We have addressed a lot of the problems we've had in the Baltic Sea region when it comes to the state of the Baltic Sea. But at the same time, the challenges we have solved are the easy ones. And now the next step is go beyond protection versus use of resources. And the next step is about actually making sure that the solutions we use in economic activities are at the same time good for the economy, productivity, and environmental protection. So I usually, when I speak as the Ministry of the Environment, I don't say that we are the ministry that protects the environment. We are the ministry that tries to green the economy, because we can't protect the environment by just having some small areas of protected areas. We have to make sure that the economic activities support the ecosystems, the access to clean water we get from having pure, pristine lakes in Finland and other countries, and that we actually get jobs out of that equation as well. And there are clear examples that this is actually happening, what we are doing in the Baltic Sea region today. I will mention the challenge of agriculture, which was raised by my dear friend from Poland. We have been working with this together. Agriculture uses phosphorus as a key ingredient for maintaining food security and production values in our growth of crops and globally as a source of food resources. And phosphorus is a limited resource which we are running out of in the world, to mine extractable phosphorus in something like 100 years. So why do we allow phosphorus to leak out into the sea and create eutrophication and problems for sea life and people who want to have recreational activities by the sea, which creates jobs as well? There is no point in allowing phosphorus to be lost. So we need to create a circular economy where we actually use all the phosphorus that we have been producing, for example, in animal manure. We create biogas out of it. We use separative machines which more effectively takes the old phosphorus into recycling, and we can more effectively use it again in agriculture. In something like 5 or 10 years, Finland doesn't need any external phosphorus in its agriculture. And we create more economic income for farmers by getting money out of biogas and bioenergy and limiting the costs of external phosphorus and other sources of fertilizers. And the basic philosophy how we can solve the environmental problems today is combining technology and innovation, new economic solutions and technologies that we put into use with sound environmental and economic policies, norms and regulation by governments. So we need all this, and all this is achieved by cooperation between individual companies, individuals, NGOs, governments, and all different actors and stakeholders. Often journalists say to me that, why do we have so many actors who are trying to protect the Baltic Sea? I'm always saying that that's just good that so many people are interested in the protection of the sea, because it's not just the governments who can fix this. Innovation is done in the research centers, and universities and companies are implementing them, but governments have to make sure that the platform is always supportive of the forerunners, the new technologies, instead of supporting conservative solutions in our economy. So I think this is the step forward, and when we are in the city of Turku, one example, as my last point, is a good one to make. Industries and environmental sustainability also go hand in hand. We have a good maritime sector in Turku, which is part of the Finnish maritime sector, which creates the best LNG engines in the world, so we can use natural gas as a more sustainable source for whole maritime sector globally in the future to solve CO2 emission problems, phosphorus and sulfurous emissions and other nitrogen emissions from maritime traffic, for example. So by being on the forefront in clean tech solutions also in fields which are considered heavy industries like maritime dock industries, we can actually create jobs in Europe, also in this region, and solve global problems. So basically, when I travel abroad and meet my colleagues, ministers of the environment, they're always asking, what are your best solutions in fixing the problems we have? And this region needs to have those solutions. Thank you all.
Other questions?
Thank you very much, Ville. We could not have hoped for a better closing statement. I can see that there is a burning comment to what you have said.
On? Yeah, I have a question. We're all talking about development, innovation, pharmaceuticals, but no one is speaking about removal of pharmaceuticals. We're getting older and older, we use more medicine, and no one's taking care of the medicine. We can say that the fishes are changing gender, and fishes are getting slower and now getting away from the predators due to different kind of molecules in the water. What do you think about that, the removal of pharmaceuticals? Do you think we should legislate it? Because it's not so expensive right now.
Alex Stubb has to leave, so we need to excuse him. We will close in a couple of minutes, but Ville, please have the last word.
I think it's actually a very interesting topic where everything that we have been discussing here comes together. Also, how we use chemicals and how we use medicine, the way we produce them, we can also make sure that there is less environmental problems when it goes to the sewage systems and so on. But we are using more and more technological expertise also in catching the new chemical cocktails and the kind of new, for example, hormonous medicine. If that's used in a large scale, we need to fix those also in the sewage system. So basically, everything that we people do affects our environment. And if we use protective technology when we take new solutions into use, which often includes high-tech knowledge, which I think the pharmaceutical companies in this region and maritime companies in this region have, we at the same time solve the environmental issues, solve the polluter-based problem as well, and also create environmental economic growth. So I think that's the mix we need to create, and the cities have a big role in that as well.
Thank you very much, Ville. We will have to leave it there, as the BBC usually tends to say. There are planes that people have to catch, and we need to rush to the rest of the program. But Emily, I don't know about you, but if I was to draw a conclusion in one sentence from what we have heard, and we have deliberately heard feedback from many areas in order to show what is under the surface, what is the potential. But my conclusion would be that we should thank God we have challenges, because challenges create a potential for innovation. In that way, we probably differ to the Americans, who focus so much more on entertainment. And innovation in the US is entertainment-driven. In our case, it's more, even though we have yellow pants, yellow trousers, we are serious people. We focus on challenges, and this is where we see the future for ourselves. Please join me in thanking our panelists for what they had to say. We will now have an hour-long lunch break, and we will reconvene for the parallel sessions at 2 o'clock, and then we'll meet here again at 4 o'clock with the Prime Ministers for the next plenary session. Thank you very much.